Welcome to the third episode of the Sport Analytics Podcast. Today, we're joined by Neil Pierre-Louis, who is a software engineer for baseball systems at the Boston Red Sox. Neil, how are you doing?
Doing well. How about you?
Doing well. We'll get straight in here. So you started your professional journey as a software engineering intern at Google before diving into college baseball analytics at UNC and then moved on to the Boston Red Sox. Could you walk us through these transitions and share how each experience, shaped your career trajectory?
Definitely. Yeah. So to start, you mentioned my name's Neil. Current software developer for the Boston Red Sox baseball research and development department. Yeah, it's been quite the journey, I guess. I went into college actually as an environmental science major, and did not think I'd end up where I am at now. But yeah, I had to take Comp 110, which is an intro class to computer science at UNC. Chris Jordan, if you're somehow watching this, thank you. Your class was awesome. The reason why I got into computer science. Yeah, after taking that class, it was really interesting to me. I enjoyed it, and so I switched over. And then my dad did biostatistics, and he kind of mentioned me like, "Hey, you could pick this up as a minor." And me, like being a huge sports fan in general, that was something that maybe I could combine the two. But I hadn't really thought about sports analytics that heavily at the time. This is around my sophomore year, so I had my first internship at Google, which was with the Android messages team. Or sorry, that was my second one. My first one was Google Flights, which is actually based out of here in Cambridge and Boston, but I was remote that summer. But really fun project. Kind of it was my first, I guess, ever 9 to 5 technically. Kind of learning the ropes there. It was a really good time. And then it was around that summer in fall. I started getting just the sports analytics scene in general, and one of my good friends who was director of UNC Baseball Analytics, Bradley Buckner, I took probability with him. And he was like, "Hey, you should, we're hiring new analysts. I guess hiring, we're all students. No one was getting paid, unfortunately, but he's like, we're taking new analysts. You should definitely apply." And the rest is history from there. Applied and then got to work with the team for 2 years, one as an analyst and then one as a project lead. And then I went back to Google for a summer to I was on the Android messages team, like I mentioned. That was a great experience. Lived in Seattle for a summer, loved it. And then full time work was looking for jobs and found this position with the Red Sox. It was the perfect balance of, what I did kind of at Google and then with baseball analytics as well. And yeah, I've been here for a year and a half now, and I love it. So
Yeah, that sounds like a really interesting journey. You also have created, some advanced hockey analytics tools like your, expected goals bot. What were some of the biggest challenges in like shifting between, hockey and baseball analytics, and how did some of your previous experiences maybe change your like, I guess, like inform your approach to building like robust, sports specific models?
yeah, going. I'll start with the hockey ones. Yeah, my first I feel like my first big project was, I guess it wasn't big, but just building out my scraper. That was kind of difficult just because, like a lot of kind of personal projects, I feel like for most people, like you kind of don't really know what you're doing when you start out, and that was exactly my issue. I'm actually dealing with this right now. It's like I'm looking at my code for my scraper, and I'm like, this is terrible. And it's like, yeah, I wrote this with very minimal Python and like API knowledge. But it was like very fun to navigate, and I feel like you learn so much just doing something you also enjoy. Like that project has kind of powered everything else I do. I guess for baseball analytics, when I was at UNC, it wasn't as difficult just because a lot of it was like very like there's like a request from like whether it's our director or like a coach. It was more like, hey, like we have this issue. Like, can you look into do research for maybe this pitcher or like could be even something like just data quality related. So I feel like that was never like too difficult in the sense that the field wasn't like broad like kind of is with personal projects and stuff. But yeah.
Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah. I guess like, you know, I guess like on like a not too much on a specific level because I know you probably can't reveal a lot of details about your projects, but maybe can you describe like how your role and responsibilities kind of have changed from your position at UNC to what you're doing now with the Red Sox?
Yeah, I can definitely speak on that. The UNC role actually prepared me like very well for this. Like, obviously the college baseball season is like very different, but um, in terms of months and stuff, but kind of similar. Where like you have the off season and a lot has to get done then before you start with February baseball. And there's just a lot of deadlines that, for example, if I'm working on a project for the MLB draft and I finish that in August, it's useless, right? Because,
Mhm.
the draft's in July. So it's like kind of navigating around that with UNC baseball, just because we did a lot of our projects like late in the fall and the winter, and then got that ready. Because once the season goes, it's like it's so hard to get a lot of big things done. So I feel like honestly, it wasn't anything like I'd say technically that I feel like I had to really drill into, but more just like project management and I guess I don't manage anyone now, but managing a team of like four students was really useful for like my skills in general. Just kind of keeping track of you have a lot of things going on, and there's a hard deadline for everything. So just I guess being responsible is huge, and then it just kind of prepares you too for like the sports world is just like I always talk about this with like my coworkers or friends who are in it. Like it's just so different from a lot of things you do. And I mean, even in software engineering, where like every I've been at two other companies before this as an intern. It's like you have hard deadlines and stuff, but it's different when you're talking with like a coach, for example, or someone who might have a different level of like understanding of like statistics and stuff, and there's like that translation level you have to get past. And that's something I haven't had to deal with as much here, just because I'm not talking to public score or anything. But that was definitely a challenge at UNC baseball that I feel like just prepared me in honestly any role of life. So yeah,
Yeah,
hopefully that answered the question.
yeah, for sure. Yeah, and it seems like you've had like a wide range of experiences, and I kind of want to like follow up on that. Between your like Google internship, your hockey analytics projects, and building MLB tools, you've been exposed to, I'm sure, like a wide range of technologies from Java, Angular, and TypeScript at Google to like what you use normally for sports analytics, like Python and R. So, which tools and languages do you rely on most day to day now, and are there any emerging technologies that excite you for the future of sports data?
Yeah, so I can speak on my website and then I'll speak on the Red Sox stack as well. So my website, you got Angular front end, and then you got Node, JavaScript back end, and then Express.js, and then that's built on like a SQLite database that is like being held together by duct tape at this point. But and then for the Red Sox, our stack, we've got C sharp backend, Angular front end, and then you got SQL as our database, SQL on prem. And I feel like emerging technologies, I wouldn't say anything kind of sticks out to me now, but I'd say for any, I guess, future baseball system developers, or honestly, this goes for analysts too, but I feel like and I'm sure other people in the industry can kind of speak on this, other sports as well, but like every sport's getting some type of, biomechanical or like tracking data, and these the data sets are just getting huge. So I feel like knowing SQL is something I feel like it's not something that I feel like is really emphasized in sports analytics community, but I'd say it's like so huge. Like I somehow got this role without any SQL experience going in, and I had to learn like very quickly on the fly just because I feel like it's so limiting without it. And yeah, I mean, it's even like even if you're an analyst, right? If you're like selecting all like select star on some of these tables, it's like it's an efficiency thing. Like you're gonna be waiting a long time, depending on like what queries you make, and keeping things as efficient as possible just allows other people to do their research or make their decisions quickly, which that's like honestly that's the end goal at the end of the day with competing with 29 other teams. It's tough. So
Yeah. Yeah, I think learning SQL is definitely something really important that all aspiring analysts should look into. And obviously, you've had like once again, like with your wide range of experiences, I think your current role is very unique in that you kind of combine software engineering and data science. So I just wanted to ask, from your time from your time at Google to UNC Baseball to a major MLB front office, you gained a rare perspective. What advice would you give to someone hoping to follow a similar path, especially if they're juggling multiple interests like hockey and baseball analytics?
Yeah, I'd say I guess I got two things. One, like definitely know kind of like know your industry pretty well. Like just because not all like hockey and baseball, I feel like professionally for sports analytics are like very different. Like baseball, and this is limited knowledge for me on hockey, right? Just because I haven't worked in there, but I know people who have been in there. It's like baseball is very advanced. Like our R&D team is pretty big. Like I'd say around 30 plus people. And it's kind of the norm now. I just went to an MLB engineering conference, and yeah, it's like these teams are like pretty well established. Whereas like hockey or even football, like depending on what team you're on, like you might be the only analyst or software developer. So it really differs on where you are. But I'd say yeah, comparing those like experiences, I'd say just be prepared. Like it's very similar to like a startup, which like I very much enjoy it. I feel like I've learned just a lot quicker. Yeah, it's different. When I was at Google, like for example, my project there for Android messages, I made this like debugging tool that like replaced some other tool. It was like way slower. And my first 6 weeks was a 12-week internship. So half the internship was just writing the design document, like no coding, like how to get it approved, like a lot of meetings. And I'm not saying it's like bad or anything. I think that's kind of necessary for a company of that size, right? And I learned so much through that internship, and honestly, I brought like a lot of those practices to like my team and kind of the way I program. But it's like what works there is not going to work for a smaller team where you just have some deadlines that you have to meet, really quickly just for the sake of the organization. So it's like it's fun. It's kind of just like you have a lot of um, I guess say depending on like I guess what team you're on or what sport you're in, but like there's just a lot of impact you can make, which I personally enjoy. Like my internship project, my first one at Google, I'm like pretty convinced is no long like that code has been deprecated for sure. Whereas like here, within I feel like a month, like I was making like pretty like impactful changes to the organization, which is like very exciting as someone who's passionate about sports. So I'd say those are two big things. Like you definitely need to like be ready for that startup-ish like environment. Things just move very quickly, but you'll learn quickly too, which is exciting.
Yeah, that advice is really inspiring. I'm not sure if you've been involved with the recruiting process for the team for new analysts or new software developers, but I guess kind of maybe hypothetically, like which types of projects or demonstrations best showcase a candidate's capability when they're aiming for roles in sports analytics and development?
Yeah, it's a good question, and yeah, I have been a little bit involved in our processes, and I feel like the big thing is just seeing like yeah, like almost. I feel like for me, like I was truly in charge. Like a portfolio would have to be like necessary, right? Like it's just like such an easy way to see. A lot of these things that you see online are like very transferable skills to like what we do, very similar to what we do. And so I feel like seeing that and that not only does it display their technical skill and knowledge of the game, but also like their passion, which is something that's pretty important for a role as intense as these are. So I'd say honestly, like to any aspiring analyst or developer who like is looking for a role, like I'd say kind of tailor your projects to like what you want to like do, right? Like if I wanted to be, a yeah, if I'm gonna be a baseball systems developer at an MLB team, like building like a full stack web application that I don't know aggregates like let's say college baseball data or even like it could be like a copycat of like baseball savant or something similar, but seeing someone do that, it's like, oh wow, these are like very like they'll learn very quickly here. Like that's something similar to what these teams are doing. Like if you want to be an analyst, doing kind of writing your own, having your own Substack or Medium, you know, just finding random questions and that you have about the game and answering them through and having like statistical methods and research and everything behind it. I feel like that's kind of the biggest thing. But and so many people on Twitter have also said this, but it's just like it's the simplest way to do it. Like people will see your work. Like I'm on there. Like so many other people are on there. Like people will see it, and if it's and the best part too is that like you'll get great feedback even if it's bad. Like I started out my Twitter account just posting hockey analytics, and I look back at some of my first posts and I'm like, wow, this is like terrible. But like people gave me like great feedback, and you iterate on that, and you'll get a lot better. You'll improve your skills, and like teams will reach out. Like I can't even describe the it's almost every day at this point. Someone on Twitter who posts regularly, their projects or their work is getting hired, and it sucks because they're gone off Twitter publicly. But I'm so happy for them because they deserve it. So
Yeah, that's really inspiring advice. You majored in computer science with a statistics and analytics minor at UNC. Based on your experience, what essential topics or skills should like certification programs like ours emphasize for those looking to land roles in baseball research and development or any advanced analytics role?
yeah, I'd say outside of your coursework, um, yeah, like I know I touched on SQL earlier. Like that is a huge one that you should kind of get into. I'd say honestly, I feel like most of the skills like you'll pretty much learn in class or just through your personal projects. I really wouldn't target like anything specifically. Obviously, like if you're an analyst, like you should know R, Python. Like those are the big two across the industry. But I feel like if you're studying that in school, like any stats class in school, like you'll pick up one of the two. And then for like data engineers or um, developers, like I feel like yeah, just I don't know, taking like you could do even if you haven't taken a full stack web development class, like there are a lot of great YouTube videos and resources out there. Like I took a Udemy Angular course like a month before my Google internship because I was terrified and I didn't know any Angular, but very easy to pick up on. So I kind of say that's another thing where like it's kind of know what you're targeting. Like if you see like like I'm sure there's a lot of teams out there that maybe use React or something, and you want to be a front end developer. Like that's definitely a skill you should pick up. So I'd kind of say those are the important things.
Yeah, that's really inspiring. Yeah, I think having those skills are definitely really important. And kind of going back to your role with the Red Sox, or I mean, I guess also with your UNC baseball role. So like obviously that baseball role kind of gave you the chance to manage a team, work with coaches, and develop front end solutions for hitting metrics. I guess how do these collaborations on campus, with the coaches there, with the players there, set the stage for like handling cross departmental projects in an MLB front office?
Yeah, I'm glad you touched up on that because another thing I was going to mention is that I think having, and this is something that I guess not easy to pick up, but having like great communication skills is like so important, especially when you're you're taking this big pool of information and conglomerating into something that is still very complicated, and then you have to diffuse it to someone who does not have like the statistical understanding that you do. Because if you can't do that, then what you have created is like not like it's useless, right? If the stakeholder that truly is going to make a decision doesn't understand it. Um, but yeah, that was so important for me just because it was like very hard, right? Like managing, like I had four, I think, yeah, about four students on my team, and it's tough just because like yeah, we got tight deadlines, but also like we're still students. Like I had like 17 credit hours my first semester of senior year, and they're really busy, like coordinating meeting times, and then kind of staying on top of things. Like hey, like we need this part of the project by X date so we can get this presentation ready for the coaches. And yeah, I didn't interact with the coaches as much as our directors did on like a day to day level, but a lot of like the presentations we did. those were like also very important just because again like touches on you really have to like make what your research is as like understandable as possible, like basically translating like I'm not gonna show my coach like an awk curve, right? He's just gonna be like, all right, what are the takeaways from, this model, or like how can we implement this in our pregame scouting? And yeah, it's like it's nice when now being, a software developer, when you're meeting with like whether it's amateur scouting, pro scouting, or like player development, like I'm not gonna mention, like if we're having a discussion about, you know, ask they have in a project and they're like, hey, can we have this? I'm not going to say like we can't have this because of some, super complicated technical reason, but I can say like, hey, like that might be a very large lift. Like how can we like do this in a way that we still get this done on time, but you're still happy with the end product. So, and I guess that's something that just applies, depending on what type of software engineering or data analysis you're doing at any level of or any industry. Interpretability is a huge thing, and communication at the end of the day just comes down to that. So yeah,
Yeah,
I'd say
those soft.
that's
Mhm. Yeah, for sure.
yeah.
Yeah, those soft skills are really important. Kind of like going back to your, I guess, your combined interest in both working with baseball and hockey analytics. Whether you're modeling like expected goals in hockey or like pitch tendencies in baseball, are there any like overarching analytical principles or best practices that you kind of apply in both sports? Are there any like similarities you see within the data aspect of both sports? Yeah, if you can just elaborate on that.
Yeah, I wish I saw more similarities of hockey data than baseball. Like I obviously like as a software developer, you're not doing any modeling, but I really love how like baseball is a bunch of discrete events. It's very like easy to isolate, players, whereas hockey, it is like borderline impossible. I mean, there's like have you seen like Evolving Wild and all those guys? They have great uh like RAPM models that isolate, players and their impacts on the ice, but it's so hard and the sport is just so difficult. Like so many different angles, like an infinite amount of angles at which, someone can shoot the puck. And then you have all this mess, all this noise of players, and I'm actually doing some tracking data right now from the PWHL for the Big Data Cup, and it's just like this is so tough. And it's like I know like most NHL teams don't really have the infrastructure that baseball teams do, and I just wonder how they deal with any of this tracking data. Like it's kind of crazy, but yeah, I'd say like very different. But the other day, like you have to use, whether it's baseball data, hockey data, marketing data, like there are just simple, practices that you have to do when it comes to cleaning the data, you know, whether it's efficiently filtering, building store procedure views that are not going to take your, app performance. So yeah.
Yeah, yeah, I do see like difficulty that comes with working with hockey analytics. So I think that also does make it really interesting. Kind of you kind of answered this before with some of the emerging technologies, but just want to follow up. Obviously, baseball analytics has rapidly evolved with the new data sources like the Hawkeye and like advanced machine learning. Where do you like see the next wave of innovation for MLB teams in terms of like real-time decision support tools, deeper biomechanical data, or just something else? Like, what do you kind of like see as the future of baseball analytics?
Yeah, it's a good question. Yeah, I feel like there's a lot of discussion like online. It's like, have we, reached the apex? Like, can we even go further? But yeah, you kind of touched on it. Like, and obviously I can't go like too into detail, but I feel like, yeah, the biomechanical data is like next up and it is like so cool. And honestly, I feel like for every sport, now that I think at this point, pretty sure like every sport has. I'm not sure about football, but I know hockey and basketball are slowly getting there, but I feel like that stuff. I mean, it transcends like the game. Like we're talking about, potential, like injury recovery and stuff like that. Like I think that could really be kind of the next wave. So I'm excited for that in all sports. Honestly, like I think it's gonna be sick, especially hockey. Like if you can give a guy like 5 more miles per hour on a slap shot or his one timer by making some tweaks, like based on that data, like I think that's huge. So
Yeah, that's really interesting. And I just want to conclude by asking, if you have any like final thoughts for aspiring software developers and analysts, whether still they're still in school, interning in big tech companies, or already dabbling in side projects, like your hockey XG bot. Is there any advice you have for them, and any advice for us as we continue to expand our podcast and educational platform?
yeah, I guess I got 3 things. One, this is like super cool you're doing this. Like there's a lot of different voices in the industry that they'll agree with me and disagree with me on some things, but I feel like getting all their perspectives is like really important just because I feel like there's a lot I feel like that isn't publicly known just about a lot of these positions that people could definitely benefit from. So, yeah, kudos to y'all for doing this. And then I'd say second, yeah, just like reiterate on how important like having a portfolio is. Just for your technical skills. You'll get better every time you start a new project. You'll do things that you didn't do before. Some things you did, you'll be like, I'm never doing that again. That was terrible. So you really kind of pick up and it helps when you start a company too. Like whether it's sports or non-sports, just the whole process of going through that, I think, is important. Especially when it's just you, it's pretty difficult. But when you have like structure and other people in place, it gets a lot easier. Um, and yeah, like that's how like people will know you like if you put good stuff out there. And like I had a friend who um like he wrote a pretty cool article just about like swing paths and stuff. I think on baseball, and like some of my coworkers saw it. So like I just keep writing. Like I think that's so important. And then three, like especially if you're still in school, like I definitely say this stuff is very important. Like I think you should do as many side projects as you can, but most importantly, just enjoy school. Like you only have 4 years, depending on, I guess, more or maybe even less. You graduate early, but um, I feel like I did a great job of, despite it was really tough with baseball and other extracurriculars and managing class, but I feel like I did a good job of balancing all that. And that's something that you should definitely do in school. It's just good practice. You'll look back and have a fond memory, meet a lot of cool people, and you'll take those skills to life too. Which also still very important when when the season picks up. So
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah, that's really inspiring, Neil. Thanks a lot for agreeing to be on this episode. It was really inspiring, talking to you and your experiences.
yeah, anytime.
Yeah, thanks a lot.